Okay, so what we're going to do for this first part of this two-part assignment is we're going to do a guided vocab. So I need to teach you guys some new terms today. We just started in with the immune system. You guys should have learned about the different types of germs already. You learned about some of the most common parts of our immune system, how we fight back against germs like white blood cells, the spleen, other terms like that. So today we're going to talk about viruses, in particular because the coronavirus is out there. So let's break this down. We're going to start with one of the more simple viruses, which is called a bacteriophage. So that's what we're going to learn about today. And then I'm going to do a special assignment probably for next week, and we're going to look over the coronavirus and HIV since they both are like RNA-based viruses, and both have like a huge outsized impact on American society and the world in general. So, in here, you guys have a vocab list. Instead of making you guys just write a whole bunch of stuff down, I have this as a guided note catcher. So you guys are going to fill in stuff as I go along. So you'll have to listen to this video to actually complete the assignment. So the title of the note catcher for today is called Vocabulary: The Virus Lytic Cycle. We're going to break that whole thing down and explain what that means as we go along. So the very first term that we have up there, it should say bacteriophage, and then it's going to have like a blank next to it. And in that blank next to bacteriophage, you're going to write the definition. So, like on there, bacteriophage, it's a kind of virus that infects bacteria. And they have a picture of it to your right if you look over there. It kind of looks like an alien. I know you've probably seen this before in video games, in movies. They show this, and they usually show this virus because it is so common and it looks so alien that it's like essentially it's appealing to use for Hollywood. This does not affect humans. It's a bacteriophage, so it affects bacteria. So whenever you see this in a movie and they're like, oh, this is the thing that's killing off all the humans, you're going to be like, nah, Mr. Kelly told me that this is only going to kill bacteria. So, and then you can know that they're using junk or fake science in that movie. Okay, so it has 2 bullet points underneath there. So it has tail fibers. And so tail fibers are these little things. So if you look here, this one would be easier. So down here, those little stilts that it looks like it's walking on, those are the tail fibers, okay? And so those tail fibers of bacteriophage, they bind to the surface. Like they literally like connect on and they hold the virus to the surface of the bacteria cell. So the bacteria then, the bacteriophage then punches down, almost like a I don't know, like a drill, and then it has like these almost like 2 like little teeth, and it injects its nucleic acid into the hole that it creates. So the word bacteriophage actually has 2 parts. Phage, like the Phage, that means like to eat. It comes from a Greek word. But this bacteriophage doesn't actually eat bacteria. These terms were sort of just made up before everyone knew exactly what was happening with these viruses. Okay, so the second term that we're going to learn today is capsid. So capsid is a protein coat that surrounds a virus. So you'll see it here. It is that like tetrahedron, like this geometric shape up there. That's the capsid, okay? So the capsid is the protein coat surrounding a virus. And so these protein coats that surround a virus, they're basically like a shield. So this is the proteins on a virus's capsid are able to bind to receptor proteins on a host cell. So these proteins must be very specific. Now you have another like little hole like in this definition right here, right? You need to fill it in. So the proteins must be very specific, like a key fitting a lock. And we've talked about this before. So you should be filling in a key fitting into a lock right there. And we've talked about this before about the lock and key, about when protein and like the receptors on cells. So this is the same thing. If the shape does not match perfectly, it cannot connect. And so this is why like certain viruses are like so dangerous to one species. Like we get the flu every year, but this is like a human style flu. Like it's not engineered like it's not artificially engineered. It's just made through evolution to affect us. Like, it doesn't sweep through and kill tens of thousands of dogs each year, stuff like that. But there are viruses that are very specific to certain species. And you guys have heard of the swine flu. So that was a flu that normally affects pigs, but it had a mutation in it for one of the receptor proteins. And so it all of a sudden matched receptor proteins that are on our cells and are able to lock in and actually inject its either DNA or RNA, which it's actually an RNA virus, into our cells and infect us. So that's why animal diseases normally don't affect us. But if they do, our bodies have never seen it before. And then that's why it's so dangerous, because we have no defenses against it because we're not used to it. So viruses have to fit in through lock and key method. So we're going to go on to the next definition. It says host cell. So host cell. So a host cell is a cell that is infected by a virus. That's it. It's basically plain host to this virus. Like, the virus is inside of it. The cell is now hosting it. So your definition you have to have down. A cell that is infected by a virus. That's it. And so, but I want to talk about this more. So host cells, like, all viruses can't just infect every type of like cell that's in your body. You have tons of different types of cells like that are in your body. Like HIV, for example, like that virus attacks your white blood cells, and so specifically your T cells. So you have tons of different types of white blood cells. It doesn't affect all of them, and it doesn't just go in and start like injecting itself into your heart cells or into your brain cells or anything like that. So it specifically targets your white blood cells. That's why it's so dangerous. It destroys your immune system, and you can't even fight back against it, let alone like other things like cancers and stuff like that pop up into your body. So the next term that we have, it's called lyse. And so lyse means to burst open, like burst, pop. So that's what lyse means. So that's your definition, lyse, to burst open. The next term, I have the definition wrote down. You just need to write the term in, because this is a long definition. I didn't want to make you write that much. So it's called lytic cycle. So Lytic cycle, Cycle. So lytic cycle is this next one. And that's the reproductive cycle of a virus, in which the virus enters a cell, makes a copy of itself, so all of a sudden now there's two, and causes a cell to burst. So it's not just two, it makes copies. It'll make like hundreds of thousands, millions of copies. These are very, very small. And then as soon as the cell is like filled up and the cell's sort of wasted and used up, it burst at the end. It lyses. And all these little virus particles like fly around in your bloodstream, and then they look for new perfect cells to match up to and infect. So in this cycle, it doesn't always burst right away. Sometimes it'll go in and lay dormant. It can lay dormant for years. It can lay dormant for like weeks. It doesn't matter. Like, you guys have all heard of the like herpes virus. Like, it can go in and infect a cell, cause an outbreak, like, which is like a rash on a human, and then go dormant for a long time. It might stay in your cells and not even like reactivate for a month, a year. It just depends. And then all of a sudden it activates again and then starts spreading again. So these cycles are not always active. Okay, so if we go down to our next definition, which is virus. So next to virus, you're going to write, a virus is a microscopic particle that can replicate only by infecting living cells. So a microscopic particle that can replicate only by infecting living cells. And so there's a couple like word choices in here that are very particular. So first off, they call it a microscopic particle, not organism, and they say that they only replicate by infecting living cells instead of just cells. So they chose those for a reason. So they're particles. They are not an organism. So they infect living cells because they are not living themselves. Okay? So a virus is not alive. It's not an organism. It's a particle that infects living cells. So on the first bullet point on this one, it says viruses are composed of, first off, three things: proteins, nucleic acids, and sometimes lipids. So proteins, nucleic acid, sometimes lipids. And so that's the definition. So you can stop writing right there, but I just want to explain more on there. The reason why it says sometimes lipids, not all viruses have a lipid coat. Now this coronavirus that's out right now, the coronavirus has a lipid envelope. It's basically like a cell membrane almost. Remember, this is not a cell, it's a virus, but it almost has like what we have on the outside of every one of our cells, which is a cell membrane made of lipids, which are fat molecules, okay? And so some viruses do have that, just like the coronavirus does. That's why they say washing your hands with soap and water will kill it, because soap breaks up fat particles. Like you have greasy hands, that's fat. You put soap on it, and then the grease goes away. The fat dissolves, and so that you can dissolve the outer lipid coat of these viruses. Okay, and then your second bullet point, it says viruses are not alive. So viruses are not alive. So that's it. But they do not grow. They don't develop. They do not metabolize energy. So when I say they don't metabolize energy, is they can't make their own ATP. There is no mitochondria inside of here. They're much smaller than mitochondria themselves. So they can't make their own energy. They have to hijack a living cell to get their energy. Okay. Next bullet point. The nucleic acid is a virus. Any virus is either DNA or RNA. So that's what we get to right there. The nucleic acid in a virus is either DNA or RNA. So our genetic material is DNA. And in our bodies, DNA makes RNA. RNA codes for proteins, right? Okay, so the nucleic acid in viruses is going to be different. It's DNA or RNA. So bacteriophages, the one we're going to be talking about in this lab, have DNA as their genetic material. So that's what you're going to put down. Bacteriophages have, and then there's a blank, DNA. So the viruses that cause the flu, coronavirus, and AIDS have RNA. So that's the next thing you fill in, RNA. And finally, it talks about virus shapes, because different viruses have different shapes. So viruses are often classified by their shape. So some viruses are shaped like coils, which is called a helical virus. Some viruses are shaped like spheres, just like a ball, almost like the coronavirus is a sphere. It has an envelope on the outside. And some viruses are shaped like crystals, like polyhedral. So this bacteriophage is a polyhedral virus. It has that crystalline shape on the outside. So the final type of virus, the bacteriophage, is shown above. Okay, and that is it. This was the guided notes section, and you're going to have these notes to do the lab, and it's going to be a virtual lab, and it is going to be on the Gizmo app, just like you did for your first lab, and that will be it for today.